I'd like to welcome the Honorable Dan Forrest, our Lieutenant Governor for the great state of North Carolina. Good to see you again, Dan.
Good to see you too, Roger. I have a first question for you. Are we on the adult channel or the kids channel?
We may be on the kids channel
Okay.
with me on here. I don't know, but I'll check on that. Dan, you know, you've been in office for 2 years now, and a lot of our viewing public may not know you. They may be Yankees that have moved here, or people that have moved in from other states, or you know, just a wide variety of our. You never know who's watching. Yeah. Could you tell us about your family and everything?
Sure. Well, grew up in North Carolina. Spent pretty much my whole life here, with the exception of a couple years I was in South Carolina. But met my wife while I was in school at University of North Carolina at Charlotte, in architecture school, and we have been married now for 23 years, and we have...
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. 4 kids. I have a son that's about to graduate from UNC Chapel Hill in a couple months, and I have a daughter that just started at NC State. She's a freshman. And then I have a 16-year-old son and a 10-year-old daughter. So we have 4 kids. We're a homeschool family. Been doing that for 16 years or so now, and just an amazing wife. She obviously has to be, to put up with me in politics and
You've got a
put up with the
family.
schedule and all that
You've
sort of thing.
Absolutely got a beautiful
She's
family.
great, and the kids are great, and we're just really blessed. And you know, the Lord's just really blessed us through the years with awesome kids and awesome relationships. So it's it helps when you're in this business to be able to go home to something like that.
What have you, in the 2 years that you've been in, you know, I've heard some great things about you from several of my lobbyist friends, that you run one of the tightest ships that they've seen. One of them's a long-term lobbyist, who's now the oldest rat in the barn, Jerry Williams, and he said that out of all the lieutenant governors he's observed through the years, and he's been down there for 40-some years now lobbying, that you ran the tightest ship. Very impressed with your acumen in running the Senate. Wow. Tell our listeners exactly what the lieutenant governor does. Some of them may not know some of your duties.
Well, yeah, as it relates to running the Senate, I'm the president of the Senate, so I preside over the body when we're in session and you know, when we're passing bills and that sort of thing. The biggest job is to make sure everybody's playing by the rules. Certainly to make sure that the debate is fair, that you know, people are staying within the lines, if you will, that everybody has an opportunity to speak. I think that's really important. That's something that's real important to me. It's certainly important to Senator Berger as well, you know, that everybody has their voice heard. And we want to make sure that happens on the floor of the Senate. So running a tight ship is really, you know, we're going to get in and out of there as quickly as we can. We're not going to have a lot of fluff. We're certainly not going to have shenanigans. We're not going to have any name calling on the floor, or people, you know, dealing with the typical political incivility stuff that we see in Washington. We're not going to do that in North Carolina. So everybody's voice is always heard. Everybody has a chance to talk. Everybody has a chance to debate. Everybody has a chance to ask questions, and that's the way we want it to be. But we're also going to be efficient in getting in and out of there.
Well, you know, I think it's the first time in a century we've got a Republican governor, Republican lieutenant governor. The House and Senate are both controlled by Republicans. Do you see that as an advantage now? Or, you know, there's so many, if you look at the national news and the local news and the regional news, there's so many different factions in each party that it seems to me that that might be difficult.
Well, I mean, it certainly has its difficulty, but it's better than the alternative. And so I think in the first couple years, you know, first of all, the House and the Senate was taken over by Republicans 4 years ago in 2010. And, you know, they were kind of running on all cylinders. When the governor and I got elected, those bodies were moving full speed ahead. They had their policy lined up. They knew what they were going to do. And, you know, the governor and I were still trying to figure out where the light switches were and the bathrooms were, because you don't get a manual when you come into office. It's just you figure it all out yourself and you start running. And so 2 years ago was a little bit more difficult because all the personalities were trying to figure each other out. But now we're at a different place, and I've seen the kind of tensions calm down a little bit, and I've seen people start to get along and people start to build relationships that they didn't necessarily have time to build 2 years ago. So I think it's going to be a distinct advantage as we move from here on out.
Just curious, What made you decide to make the move out of architecture? I know you spent your career as a partner in one of the largest architectural firms in the state. To make that move into public service, because I know you're a good Christian man. I know you're ethical, and I've gotten to know you over the last couple of years through our mutual friend Chris Stone, has his own ad agency in Raleigh, but he's also the founder and CEO of something that exploded globally called Faith-Driven Consumer.
I happened to be Chris's first board member on Faith-Driven Consumer, so I was right there in the beginning when he was starting the group, and now it's
Unbelievable
he's all
how
over the
that's
place. It really is
unbelievable how that's exploded,
having a
isn't
great
it?
impact, yeah.
He's been on our show several times, and I'm just amazed at how that thing is shot off like a rocket ship.
Yeah.
That says a lot about the need out there. But you know, it's very interesting on this faith-driven consumer movement. A lot of people think us Christians just sit around and watch Christian TV. I hope you watch. Don't turn the channel, but sit around and read the Bible all the time. We're consumers.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a huge market out there. In fact, if you just took the people that self-identified evangelical Christians that said, I make buying decisions based on my faith and based on how I feel the marketplace is treating me. If you just took that segment of the population, we'd be one of the largest economies in the world. And yet what happens is large manufacturers and retailers, to take one example, or movie producers, they kind of ignore the Christian community. They kind of lump them all in together with the big segment of the population, to say, well, we get them anyway. And that's really not the case. And so the work that Faith-Driven Consumer is doing is what they really call an add us in campaign. Let us be a part of everything else that you do. So you know, these companies, they micro-target all kinds of demographics, but they don't micro-target the faith-driven consumer. And so that's the work that they're doing, is to say, you know what, it's diversity, multiculturalism, all that stuff aside, just add us into the mix, if you will, and pay attention to us, because we're one of the largest segments of the purchasers out there in the world.
Well, a lot of people have asked me to ask you this. They're concerned down on the coast about the incentives being taken away from the movie industry there. Tell us what the real story is.
Well, I think anybody that's having their incentives taken away are going to be concerned about them being taken away. I mean, the real story behind it is, I think, the story that a lot of people don't want to hear, and that is there have been multiple studies done on this. The jobs that are created in North Carolina by the incentives for the movie industry are not as great as everybody says they are. They're in number. It's a lot of money that we spend. A lot of people would say, well, you know, when those movie companies come in and they create a movie in North Carolina, they're generally LLCs. They're short-term companies that set up shop. They're not coming here, and MGM is setting up a studio in North Carolina, and they're hiring thousands of people to do that movie and the next movie and the next movie. That's not the way it operates. They bring in their people from California. They come in, they shoot a movie, they leave, the money goes back to California with them. There's all these types of issues. So the numbers,
Very interesting.
if you're being really transparent with the numbers in the movie industry, you'd realize that it's probably not a real good deal for taxpayers of North Carolina to do that. The challenge with it is everybody, it's a feel-good thing. Everybody likes to say Iron Man was filmed out on the coast of North Carolina, and we take pride in that. We take pride in the movies that are shot here. You know, from a deal of the government saying this is how we should spend taxpayer money, you know, if you just want it to be pride in North Carolina to say those movies are shot there, that's one thing. But if you went around the state and asked every North Carolinian, would you be willing to pay $100 for Iron Man to be shot in North Carolina, I'm sure you'd probably get a resounding no across the board for that.
I vote no on that. What about the innovation in the aerospace industry in North Carolina? I think a lot of people are fascinated with that.
Well, you know, I guess the reason we're talking about it is because you know that we're taking it on in the Lieutenant Governor's office. Is one of those things that's important to us. I made the governor asked me to go to the Paris Air Show a couple years ago on his behalf because he couldn't make it, and went over there. And this is one of those places where, you know, every CEO and president and chairman of the board of every aerospace company in the world is in one place at one time. And,
Wow.
you know, because I have governor in my name, I get to go meet with them and set up meetings. We had 30-some meetings. We did it last year in England, too. Every year they switch off. And just blown away by the level of meetings we could have and the access to these executives that make decisions about where their companies go. And you know, when you're looking at the aerospace industry, it is still one of the fastest growing industries out there. There are 2 places in the world that they are moving the production and R&D manufacturing of their new airplanes and their components, and that is Asia and the southeastern portion of the United States. And so you see Boeing and Charleston setting up shop, saying they're going to create 30,000 jobs. You see Airbus in Alabama setting up shop, and it's created this southeast corridor that's focused on aerospace. And so, you know, we want to be a part of that game. We want to make sure that we're not being left out of that cycle. So we've taken on aerospace as a focus for North Carolina to be able to make sure that we have a voice at the table. Not just aerospace, not just airplanes, but we really want to talk about the future of automated transportation or intelligent transportation. There's a lot going on in that area that's really going to change the world in a very few years. And we want the R&D work and the manufacturing work to be created right here in North Carolina.
A friend of mine's daughter was with the corporate headquarters of Caterpillar in Peoria, Illinois. And she has worked her way up through the marketing department. And last month, they promoted her to North Carolina. And she initially fought the move. Well, she's been here 2 weeks now, and she's fallen in love with North Carolina.
Good. Yeah.
She lives here in Cary, and she's writing my friend and texting my friend, her father, that, you know, I've died and gone to heaven.
Yeah.
She has told us that Caterpillar plans on keeping their headquarters in downtown Peoria. In fact, they just bought 5 more blocks on the main street in Peoria and going to build a whole new corporate headquarters. That's going to change downtown Peoria. But the point I'm trying to make is she told us that Caterpillar owns land in North Carolina that nobody knows about yet, and they're planning on building a lot of the manufacturing here in North Carolina.
Well, I guess they know about it now because you just told them. So, you know,
We like to do scoops. We like to do scoops here on Public Report.
People love our state. You know, as I travel and meet with executives from anywhere in the world, the number one issue is that we have the lowest unionization rate in the country right here in North Carolina. So when it comes to manufacturing and you don't have to deal with the unions, that's a huge deal. It saves a lot of money and a lot of frustration. So companies are moving here for that reason. But our quality of life is fantastic. You know that as well. It's a beautiful place to be. Cost of living is just phenomenal. I was with a friend who he's an executive with a major company here in North Carolina. I was at his house, and he had some of the executives over a few weeks ago, and they were all from all over the world. But there's a group from California, from Northern California, and they were in his house, which is a very nice house. But you know, I'm not going to mention his name, so, you know, they say it's in the $600,000 range, big house. All these people are saying this house would be $8 million in Northern California. So the quality of life and the cost of living issues alone, not to mention the climate and everything else we have going for us, is really phenomenal. And so people are still moving here from all over the world. That's why we're now the 9th most populous state in America, and we're going to continue to grow.
And as you know, we're the 24th largest media market now.
Yeah.
So that puts us in a whole new ball game as far as the media goes.
That's right.
When you're in a top 50 market, getting back to something you said a minute ago, talking about dealing with unions, when I was with NW Air in New York and with J. Walter Thompson, to do a 30-second TV spot, the book was that thick. 5 directors, you know, there was a main director, then an assistant director, then assistant to the assistant, 5 wardrobe people, you know, the union contracts were that thick. In Raleigh, you can go over to one of the commercial television stations or production house, and there are 2 or 3 pages.
Yeah.
You know.
If we were sitting here in a union studio, you couldn't change the light bulb if the light went out. You'd have to wait for the union worker who is in charge of changing the light bulb to come in and do that for you.
You know,
it's
I'm a
unsustainable.
North Carolina country boy, and on my first TV shoot up there, you know, I'd never dealt with unions before I moved to New York, and I went over to touch the camera. I worked at WRL's, my first job,
Yeah.
WRL Television, and I went over to touch the camera, and some guy, said, "You're not allowed to touch that."
That's right.
And I was in account management, I said, "Oh, really?" He said, "Yes." And okay, I understood the Queen's English then.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Talking about teacher pay, that's another issue. And education endowment and rewarding our best teachers. Let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, there's a lot of false information out there, Roger, about teacher pay and even about spending on education. In fact, if this budget goes through that the governor's releasing now and the House and the Senate are favorable to that budget, by the end of the governor's first term, we will have spent over $1 billion, with a B, $1 billion more dollars on teacher pay.
Wow.
And so there's a lot of critics out there saying we're cutting teacher pay, teachers are leaving in droves, we don't have enough teachers to fill our classrooms. None of that is true at all. Teachers don't leave North Carolina any faster than they leave anywhere else in the country. The statistics are all misleading anyway, because a teacher leaving a school and going to another school, even within North Carolina, is counted as a teacher leaving. If a teacher leaves a school in North Carolina and goes to another school in another state, it's still counted as a teacher leaving. So you end up having these false statistics out there. We're trying to change some of that to get a true picture of the statistics. The number of students in the universities that are going to get teaching degrees is dropping. It's fallen significantly, but the deans of the schools of teaching at the universities are saying it's because parents are talking their kids out of going into teaching, not because kids don't want to go into teaching. So, and they also say there's enough teachers in the pipeline to fill the positions that are out there. So we have some issues. There's no doubt we have issues, but we're, as Republicans, we've been raising teacher pay. We gave teachers the largest pay raise they've had in the history of North Carolina, and we're making good on that in this budget cycle. And one of the things we're doing is last year we created the North Carolina Education Endowment Fund. And the intent of that fund is to reward our best and brightest teachers, to have a bonus program through this endowment that teachers get nominated and then they get rewarded for doing excellent work, for providing results in the classroom. And so there are things that we're working on to fill the coffers, if you will, of the endowment with money. One is North Carolina Education, or the I Support Teachers license plate. It's the smallest part. It's got some criticism in the media, where the media has been saying we're trying to fund education on bake sales and license plates, and nobody's funding education on this. We're just trying to do a feel-good thing for teachers and put some money in the endowment. Then you can also, there's a checkoff box on your tax form. So if you're filling out your taxes right now, you can check off, say, I want my money a portion of my tax return to go to the Education Endowment Fund. And if you're a corporation or individual, you can give a tax-deductible donation to that. And so we have some corporations that are willing to put money in that to reward our best and brightest teachers. And so you're going to see some of that in the budget as well, and we're going to start using that to reward our teachers.
What have you found to be the most difficult thing, being president of the Senate, being lieutenant governor, and how that's shaken up your life? I know your mother was involved with politics, but you've never held political office until 2 years and a few months ago. That had to sort of be a cultural shock to you, didn't it?
Well, I think I don't know if it's a cultural shock because I grew up with it, so I understood the
That's
culture.
true.
I knew what I was getting into. There's nothing really glamorous about politics. I think that, if there's a getting used to, it really probably is on your family more than me, because I have pretty thick skin. Certainly, nobody ever wants people saying bad things about them, especially when they're not true. And so, you have to deal with that every single day. There's people telling lies about you and saying horrible things, especially in this day of social media, where people can create a false name and they can go out on the internet and say whatever they want with absolutely no accountability and no consequences.
When I worked for Governor Martin for 8 years, his favorite expression, his father was a Methodist minister from Greenville, South Carolina. And he's a pretty mean tuba player, and he loves the Embers and loves beach music like I do, and rhythm and blues music. But his favorite expression was he didn't care what the News and Observer said about him as long as they spelled his name right. Yeah. Because we would all the time send him negative articles.
Yeah.
And he was a college professor. Quick funny story. One of my duties with him was to write anything that dealt with highway safety. I had to write the draft for him. Well, the first draft I wrote for him, I said, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to send this over. And he sent it back to me the next day through his secretary, Dottie Fuller, because she had told me that if there's a red dot on the top of the letter, he wanted it on his desk by 8 o'clock next morning. Well, it turned out the next 8 years, every letter we got was a red dot on it. But anyway, Martin decided that he was going to make the drunk driving issue one of his top 8 priorities due to his background. I worked for the man for 8 years and never heard him cuss, never heard him say anything bad about anybody. So seriously, never heard him say anything negative about it. We were getting murdered over in the General Assembly. We got, in 8 years, as far as highway safety was concerned, we got 2 bills passed. And that was with the help of mad mothers. We got the BAC lowered to a .08 from a 10, and we got the seatbelt law passed. Other than that, you know, good luck to you. But how have you, being a Christian and walking the walk and talking the talk like you do, and I know you do, how have you somehow learned to deal with the dirty aspects of politics?
Yeah, hopefully the same way that Governor Martin did. You just kind of ignore it. You don't make a big deal out of it. You understand that it's human nature, that that's what people do. If you're not Christian, that's kind of what you expect from the world, and so you just don't have to spend a whole lot of time worrying about it. What you do is spend a lot of time doing the right thing no matter what. So the reality is that that's how you go about your life. Even doing the right thing, if the consequences are negative for doing it, you still do it anyway. You always tell the truth. You always do the right thing. That's what I tell my staff all the time. That's what I tell all the people around me. So people are going to say bad things about you. They're going to say negative things about you. But yeah, if you trust God and you walk through life trusting God, you know that if He's the creator of the universe and He created you and He allows your heart to beat and the blood to flow through your veins, then that God can do anything. And you know, if you trust God, then there's nothing you should fear. There's nothing you should worry about, including your own safety, your own security. Those kind of things are just not really a big concern because God's in control. And so as long as you believe that, you just go about life trying to do your best to do what the Lord would have you do for that day, because that's all we're given. And then you just love people because, you know, and even, you know, Jesus said, they will know me by the way you love one another. And so we love one another as Christians, and people see that, but then you reach out and you love the people who may not be lovable and treat them just like you treat anybody else. And hopefully that you know, that kind of spirit of things gets recognized, and people recognize you're not some bad old ogre, and you're just there like everybody else is there trying to do the right thing.
It is so refreshing to me, and I'm sure to our audience, to have a politician be willing to come on television and talk about their Christian faith and walk the walk and talk the talk. So much news we hear today is so negative. It's scary to turn on the television set on any of the regular channels now, really. I mean, you with young children and the kids in your house, it's sort of difficult.
Yeah, I mean, you know, no offense to your program or anybody else's, we don't watch a lot of TV in our house. It's just one of those things. There's not a whole lot on that. You know, there's maybe 1 or 2 shows a year that we'll actually turn on. You know, we watch sporting events and that kind of thing, and even then you have to be careful on the commercials. You know, so yeah, you know, it is what it is. But you know, the reality is within the culture, you can have those negative influences just about anywhere, or you can turn them into positives as well. So the real deal is parents talking to their kids, being able to have real conversations about the things that are going on, because that's just the world around you. That's the world that Jesus promised us, the world that Paul promised us in 2 Timothy chapter 3. You know, when you're dealing with that world, you just know what to expect.
How have you incorporated, I'm sure you have, incorporated religious training with your children in its homeschooling? I'm fascinated by the homeschooling aspect.
Well, I think there's a large percentage of folks that homeschool do it for biblical worldview reasons. They want to be able to teach and train their kids in a biblical worldview. I mean, the Bible tells us clearly that we are supposed to teach and train our kids the
Yes.
things of God. I mean, it's very clear that we're supposed to do that, and we obviously can't do that in public schools anymore. The courts have taken that ability out of our hands, and so when you can't do that in school, you have to be able to do that at home, and so you can do it at home whether your kids are in public school or not. You can train them, but when you homeschool, certainly it's a lot easier to do that. Every subject you teach, everything you do, every activity throughout the day can be focused on a biblical construct in some way, and so I think you grow a lot closer as a family, and you have a common bond that way.
I've seen some statistics that said the homeschool children actually perform better on tests,
Yeah, they do.
on the standardized testing for higher education.
Yeah.
Have you found that to be
Oh, absolutely.
the case?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have great kids. They're smart, like I would say everybody would say that, but they're all over the place at the same time. Some are better at some subjects than others.
Right.
Some struggle. The advantage of homeschooling is when a kid is struggling in a subject like math, you can slow way down. You don't have to rush through. But if they're great at math, you can speed them up, and they can go on at a pace that's exceptional. And that's what we're trying to get to, even in public school in North Carolina, is mastery-based learning. So kids are advancing at the pace they can advance at, and fast if necessary or possible, and slow down if necessary. And so we've been doing some things in the homeschooling movement that the world is just catching up to now.
Well, if you don't mind, Dan, would you please look directly into the camera and don't close your eyes.
Yeah.
Look directly into the camera and give us a prayer.
Sure. Lord, we just thank you for this opportunity, an opportunity, one, just to come on and share a few things with the people of North Carolina. But we thank you that you do place good people in positions of leadership, and we want to pray for them. We want to lift up those people that are in our General Assembly, those that are in the House and the Senate. Certainly lift up the governor, our members of Congress, our members of the Senate, our president, and give them the wisdom and the knowledge that they need to do their job well and to honor you in the way that they do it. And we just ask these things in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I know you're busy. You're in a long session. You got a lot going on. But you know what I've always admired about you, besides you being an honest, ethical man in the 2.5 years I've known you since Chris Stone introduced us, is that you walk the walk and talk the talk and are not trying to be so politically correct that you won't say a prayer or talk about your relationship with Jesus on live television.
Happy to do it, but thanks for having
We're
me on.
honored
Thanks
to
for giving
have
me the
you with us.
opportunity.